I spent 15 Christmas mornings sitting on the same couch, watching my sister and brother tear open expensive gifts while I smiled and pretended I didn't care. I learned how to clap at the right time. I learned how to say thank you, even when my gift was small and forgettable. So when my grandfather pressed a cold metal key into my hand this year and whispered, "Don't open your gift out there," they wouldn't understand. I thought it was a joke, or pity, or maybe nothing at all. I didn't know that moment would break my family in half. My name is Ilara. I am the grandchild no one worried about, the one who never caused problems, the one who showed up early to help cook and stayed late to clean. For 15 years, Christmas looked the same. My sister Camille received designer bags and jewelry. My brother Evan got cars, electronics, and praise. I got practical gifts: a sweater, a mug, a gift card that barely covered coffee. Everyone said it was fair. Everyone said I was easy, so I didn't need much. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself gifts weren't love. I believed that lie because it helped me survive. My grandfather Harold always sat quietly by the window during gift opening. He didn't clap. He didn't comment. He just watched. I used to think he was tired or distracted. Now I know he was paying attention to everything. Who visited him during the year? Who only called when they needed money? Who stayed when there was nothing to gain? That morning, when he asked me to help him to the back room, no one questioned it. I was always useful. In the hallway, away from everyone, he placed the key in my palm and closed my fingers around it. "If I don't make it to next Christmas," he said softly, "you'll understand what this is for." I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to laugh it off. Instead, I nodded and went back into the living room with my heart pounding. I sat down holding my small envelope, pretending nothing had happened, while my siblings laughed and showed off their gifts. Uncle Thomas joked loudly about inheritance. My mother smiled too quickly. My father avoided my eyes. And I realized something felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain yet. Before we go any further, subscribe to the channel and comment below, telling me where you're watching from, because this story is only just beginning. The moment gift opening ended, the room shifted into its usual rhythm. Wrapping paper was kicked aside. Phones came out. My sister Camille was already taking photos of her new bag, angling it just right so the logo showed. Evan was bragging about his gift, explaining features no one asked about. Laughter filled the room, loud and careless. I sat there with my small envelope on my lap, the key hidden in my pocket, feeling like I was holding something dangerous no one else could see. My mother leaned toward me and smiled, the tight kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "You're quiet," she said. "Didn't like your gift?" Her voice wasn't kind. It was testing. I shook my head and said it was fine. That word again, fine. The word I had used my whole life to keep things smooth. She nodded like she had proven something and turned back to Camille, praising her taste and asking where she planned to wear the bag first. Uncle Thomas suddenly raised his glass and joked about how Grandpa should hurry up and finalize his will before inflation ruined everything. Everyone laughed, too loudly. Grandpa didn't. He sat in his chair by the window, hands folded, watching. His eyes met mine for a second. Just a second. Then he looked away. My chest tightened. I wondered if I had imagined the seriousness in his voice earlier. Maybe the key meant nothing. Maybe it was just a spare. Maybe I was reading too much into it, like I always did. Dinner was served, and the tension followed us to the table. Camille talked nonstop. Evan complained about work. My mother controlled the conversation like she always did, steering it away from anything uncomfortable. No one asked me about my life. No one asked Grandpa how he was feeling. When Grandpa tried to speak once, Uncle Thomas interrupted him to tell a story about property values near the lake. The lake. That word landed heavy in my stomach. I kept my eyes on my plate, afraid my face would give something away. Halfway through dinner, my mother looked at Grandpa and said, "We should really talk about the house situation soon. It's important for everyone to know what's happening." She said it sweetly, but there was pressure underneath it. Camille nodded. Evan leaned forward. Uncle Thomas smiled like he was already counting money. Grandpa calmly took a sip of water and said nothing. The silence that followed was uncomfortable, My mother laughed it off and changed the subject, but something had cracked. After dinner, I helped clear plates like I always did. My hands were shaking. I dropped a fork, and the sound made me jump. Camille noticed and raised an eyebrow. "You okay?" she asked, sounding amused. I said I was just tired. Another lie. The key felt heavier with every minute. I kept wondering why Grandpa chose me. I wasn't special. I wasn't successful like Camille. I wasn't loud like Evan. I didn't ask for anything. Maybe that was the problem. At one point, Uncle Thomas cornered Grandpa near the fireplace. I couldn't hear everything they said, but I saw Grandpa's shoulders stiffen. Uncle Thomas laughed, clapped him on the back, and walked away satisfied. Grandpa caught my eye again. This time, he frowned slightly. It was subtle, but it felt like a warning. Later, while everyone else was distracted, I went to the bathroom and locked the door. I took the key out of my pocket and stared at it. It was old, solid, not decorative, the kind of key that belonged to something real, something important. My heart raced as questions piled up. Why give this to me in secret? Why now? Why not tell everyone? The more I thought about it, the more nervous I became. I imagined my family finding out and turning on me. I imagined being accused of manipulation, greed, betrayal. I imagined losing whatever fragile place I still had with them. I almost put the key back in my pocket and decided to forget about it, pretend it never happened. That would be easier. That would keep things the way they were. But as I looked in the mirror, I saw how small I looked, how careful, how afraid. And I realized that pretending was exactly what I had been doing for 15 years. When I came back into the living room, Grandpa was standing up, leaning heavily on his cane. He announced he was tired and going to bed early. My mother protested, but he waved her off. As he passed me, he squeezed my arm gently and whispered, "Not yet." 2 words, enough to send my thoughts spiraling. That night, as we said our goodbyes, my mother hugged Camille and Evan tightly. She gave me a quick pat on the shoulder. Grandpa held my hand longer than usual. His grip was steady, reassuring. I nodded at him, still unsure what any of this meant. Driving home, I kept replaying the day in my head. The jokes, the looks, the silence. The key burned in my pocket like a secret I wasn't ready to carry. I told myself I would wait. I told myself I wouldn't do anything stupid. I told myself this wasn't my story to control. I didn't know yet that the hardest part was still ahead. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the weight of the key in my pocket, even though it was sitting on my nightstand. I kept hearing Grandpa's voice in my head, calm and serious, telling me I would understand if he didn't make it to next Christmas. That sentence replayed over and over, pulling at something deep in my chest. I told myself to wait. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. But the longer the night went on, the more I felt like doing nothing was the same as choosing fear. By morning, my decision felt half-formed and reckless, but it felt honest. I was going to see what the key belonged to, not to take anything, not to claim anything, just to understand. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not my parents, not my siblings, not even Grandpa. Part of me knew that was wrong. Another part of me felt like if I asked for permission, I would lose my nerve. The drive to the lake was quiet and gray. Snow lined the road, and the trees stood bare and still. Every mile, doubt crept in. I told myself I was overreacting, that this was probably just an old storage shed or a guest cabin Grandpa forgot about, something small and unimportant. But when I reached the lake, my stomach dropped. The house was real, solid, well kept. Smoke curled from the chimney like someone had been there recently. I sat in my car for several minutes, heart pounding, trying to decide whether to turn around. I didn't. I unlocked the door with the key. It fit perfectly. Inside, the house smelled like wood and cold air. Everything was neat, intentional. On the table sat a stack of papers, weighted down by a smooth stone. I recognized Grandpa's handwriting immediately. My hands shook as I picked them up. Property documents, bank statements, legal forms. My name appeared again and again. It felt unreal, like I was reading someone else's life. I panicked. This was bigger than I had imagined. bigger than I wanted. For a moment, I thought about calling my mother. I pictured explaining it carefully, trying to sound innocent. I imagined her face tightening, her voice changing. I pictured Camille accusing me of sneaking around, Evan demanding answers, Uncle Thomas insisting Grandpa was being taken advantage of. The thought made my chest ache. I didn't want this. I didn't want to be in the middle. I didn't want to be the reason everything blew up. I left the house without touching anything. I locked the door. I sat in my car shaking, tears blurring my vision. I had made a mistake, not by going there, but by going alone, by not telling Grandpa, by letting my fear lead instead of trust. I drove home feeling sick, like I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. That evening, Grandpa called me. His voice was gentle. "Did you sleep last night?" he asked. I hesitated, then told him the truth. I told him I went to the lake house. I told him I panicked. I told him I was afraid of what it would do to the family. I apologized for going without saying anything. There was a long pause. My heart sank. I thought I had ruined everything. Then he laughed softly. "Good," he said. I was confused. "Good? You were scared," he said. "That means you understand the weight of it. If you hadn't gone or if you had rushed to tell everyone, I would have worried." I didn't know what to say. "You almost talked yourself out of it," he continued. "You almost gave it back. That matters." I realized then this wasn't just about property or money. This was a test of judgment, of restraint, of whether I would act from greed or care. I had made mistakes. I had doubted him, but I hadn't taken anything. I hadn't told anyone. And somehow, that was exactly what he needed to see. Before we hung up, he said one more thing. "Christmas morning will be hard. Stay quiet. Let the letter speak for me." When I hung up, my hands were still shaking, but my fear had changed. It wasn't panic anymore. It was anticipation. I didn't know exactly what was coming, but I knew I couldn't stop it now. For the first time in my life, I wasn't preparing myself to disappear. I was preparing to stand still and let the truth land where it would. And that choice, made in fear and doubt, would change everything. Christmas morning arrived quietly, too quietly. The house felt tense in a way I couldn't explain, like everyone was waiting for something, but didn't know what. Snow fell outside, soft and steady, the kind of morning that usually felt peaceful. My stomach was in knots. Grandpa sat in his usual chair by the window, hands folded, calm as ever. No one noticed the envelope under the tree, or maybe they did and chose to ignore it. My mother clapped her hands and announced it was time to gather. Camille and Evan took their places on the couch like royalty. Uncle Thomas positioned himself close to Grandpa again, pretending to be helpful. Phones were already out. Smiles were ready. I sat on the edge of a chair, heart pounding, replaying Grandpa's words in my head. "Stay quiet. Let the letter speak." My mother bent down and picked up the envelope. "What's this?" she asked, frowning slightly. Grandpa didn't answer. She opened it anyway. Her smile faded as she began to read. At first, she laughed like it was some kind of joke. Then she stopped laughing. She cleared her throat and started reading out loud, because that's how she always handled things, by controlling the room, by making everything public. The letter began calmly. Grandpa wrote about Christmas mornings, about watching us grow up, about seeing who showed up when it mattered, and who only appeared for celebrations. The room grew quiet. Camille shifted uncomfortably. Evan crossed his arms. Uncle Thomas leaned forward. Then the letter mentioned the will. That word snapped everyone to attention. My mother's voice shook as she read the next part. Grandpa explained that he had updated his estate plans, that everything had been reviewed legally, that decisions had already been made. Camille laughed nervously. "What does that mean?" she asked. Evan smirked like he wasn't worried at all. Then came the first twist. The letter did not mention the lake house. Camille relaxed instantly. Evan leaned back, satisfied. Uncle Thomas smiled, slow and smug. My mother looked relieved, like she had dodged something. I felt my chest tighten. For a split second, I wondered if I had misunderstood everything. Maybe the key wasn't what I thought. Maybe I was wrong. Then Grandpa stood up. The room froze. "I'm not finished," he said calmly. Everyone turned toward him. He reached for a folder on the side table and handed out copies. One to my mother, one to Camille, one to Evan, one to Uncle Thomas. Each envelope had their name written on it. "What's this?" Camille asked, her voice suddenly sharp. "Your part," Grandpa replied. They opened their letters at the same time. The mood changed instantly. Camille's face drained of color. Evan started reading faster, his jaw tightening. Uncle Thomas's hands began to shake. My mother stopped breathing altogether. Each letter was different. Grandpa had written to them individually. He detailed moments from the past 15 years, missed visits, promises not kept, calls that only came when money was needed, the times he was sick and alone, the birthdays forgotten, the holidays rushed, the way they talked about inheritance, like it was already theirs. The room filled with the sound of paper shaking. "This isn't fair!" Camille snapped. "You're twisting things!" Evan laughed bitterly. "You can't punish us for living our lives." Uncle Thomas didn't say anything. He just stared at his letter like it was burning his hands. Then Grandpa looked at me. "Elara," he said, "did you bring the key?" My heart stopped. Every head turned toward me. I hesitated for half a second. Then I reached into my pocket and placed the key on the coffee table. The sound it made felt louder than it should have. My mother gasped. "What is that?" Grandpa answered before I could. "Proof." He picked up the original letter under the tree and read the final page out loud. His voice was steady, clear, unapologetic. He explained that the lake house had already been transferred, months ago, legally, fully, in my name. He explained that the rest of the estate had been liquidated to fund his care and charitable donations. There was nothing left to fight over. The explosion came instantly. Camille stood up, shouting. Evan demanded explanations. My mother accused me of manipulation. Uncle Thomas finally spoke, yelling that Grandpa was being influenced, confused, taken advantage of. Grandpa raised his hand. Silence fell. "I watched all of you," he said. "And I watched her." He pointed at me. "She never asked me for anything, not once. She showed up, she listened, she stayed." Then he turned to me and asked the one question I wasn't ready for. "Why didn't you tell me you went to the lake house?" The room froze again. I swallowed. My voice shook, but I answered honestly. I said I was scared. I said I thought I might be wrong. I said I didn't want to tear the family apart. I admitted I doubted him. Camille scoffed. "See? Even she knew this was wrong." Grandpa smiled softly. "No, that's why it's right." He looked at everyone else. "She was afraid of the responsibility. She didn't rush to claim it. She didn't tell anyone to protect herself. That's the difference." That was the moment everything broke. The lawyer arrived minutes later, as if on cue. He confirmed every word. Documents, transfers, dates, signatures, final. My mother sat down slowly, stunned. Camille cried in anger. Evan left the room. Uncle Thomas stormed out without a word. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exposed, shaking, overwhelmed. Grandpa reached for my hand and squeezed it. "You didn't win," he said quietly. "You were chosen." And in that moment, I finally understood. The house felt emptier after that morning, even though everyone was still there. Voices were lower. Movements were slower. The celebration had collapsed into something fragile and awkward. Camille locked herself in the guest room. Evan left without saying goodbye. Uncle Thomas didn't come back inside at all. My mother sat on the couch staring at the floor like the ground had shifted under her feet. No one looked at me. I didn't know whether to feel relief or grief. Grandpa asked me to help him to the car. We didn't say much as we walked outside. The snow had stopped, and the air was sharp and clean. He sat in the passenger seat and closed his eyes for a moment, like he was finally able to rest. "You did well," he said quietly. I shook my head. "I almost ruined it," I told him. "I doubted you. I went to the lake house without telling you." He smiled and said, "You were human. That mattered more than being perfect." The drive to the lake was calm. The radio played softly, but neither of us listened. When we arrived, Grandpa looked around the house like he was seeing it for the last time. He told me stories I had never heard before, about how he bought the place when he was younger, about summers on the water, about how he hoped it would be a place of peace, not arguments. I listened, realizing that this wasn't about reward. It was about trust. Over the next few weeks, the messages came. Some were angry, some were desperate. My mother asked how I could do this to the family. Camille accused me of stealing her future. Evan said nothing at all. I replied only once. I told them I didn't take anything. I accepted what was given. Then I stopped responding. Life slowed down in a way I wasn't used to. No constant tension. No waiting for approval. I spent time at the lake house fixing small things. Painting, cleaning, learning how to be alone without feeling lonely. Grandpa stayed with me for a while. We cooked simple meals. We watched the water change color with the sky. He told me he didn't regret anything, not even the fallout. A few months later, Grandpa passed peacefully. The funeral was small. Some family members didn't come. Others came, but kept their distance. I stood by the water afterward and thought about everything that had led to this moment. 15 years of being overlooked. One Christmas that changed everything. I learned that love doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it comes quietly, through consistency, through showing up when no one is watching, through choosing care over comfort. I learned that being patient does not mean being invisible, and that being chosen does not mean you have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. The lake house didn't fix my family. It didn't make me better than anyone else. But it gave me something I had never had before, a sense of belonging that didn't come with conditions, a place where I could breathe. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like the one who gives more and receives less, I want you to know something. Your worth is not measured by how loudly people praise you. It's measured by who you are when no one is keeping score. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. If it meant something to you, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from right now? I read every single one.